everyone, and welcome to the stream scene. I am back. I hope you guys are ready for an excellent episode today. We're going to be talking about tabletop and streaming D&D on Twitch and what that is all about and what that looks like. I'm joined here by my awesome co-host, D. Hunter Wild. Hunter, how you doing?
Hunter, the Hunter Wild. Everybody survived me hosting last week's show, so I'm very excited to have you back.
That's good. I am proud of you.
It was brutal. I'm pretty fantastic. I ate some really good pasta. That's like a highlight for my month, I think. It's just delicious. But I'm really excited to be jamming out on this particular subject. This we've been trying to cover for like a year, trying to get some brilliant people on to talk about tabletop and D&D, tabletop streaming, D&D role play. There's a lot of things to list out on what the broad subjects are. And we got them. We got the rock stars. BradWOTO, aka BradWOTO, and Pumpkinberry, PB. Welcome on the show. Thanks for taking the time to educate us with your infinite wisdom today. I think, Brad, you're introducing yourself first. Tell us who you are.
Thanks for having us on. I know that you went down the list really, and then you came to us before. You were like, "What are these two scratched out names on the bottom of the list?" One of them was BradWOTO, which is me. Yes, I'm a streamer on this here fair website. I stream variety stuff during the day, but by night we, myself, PB, some other people and varying streamers and voice actors and stuff stream on a channel called Table Story, which was a channel that I started with BradWOTO many moons ago. We were on here a long time ago speaking to Loco about it. I've forgotten it. Loco's forgotten it. Jay's vanished onto the dark side of the moon in that time. But we started a tabletop channel, and it's just like you said, it's all role playing tabletop games and D&D and other systems and things like that, of which I run a D&D show which transformed halfway through into a different system, or like
right at the end, more like
three-quarters of the way through. I transformed it into a different system. It was a weird creative decision that I made, basically.
It was a brilliant creative decision. Very cool.
Yeah, but I predominantly have streamed and run D&D content on Table Story, but we have all sorts of different shows and systems over there. But that's kind of what I've done most of the time. And then we brought in PB, who's the real powerhouse. We call her the Monolith. The tabletop genius. It's my segue. You can introduce.
Yeah, I know it is, and I hate it. So, thank you, though. Thank you for having me. I'm PB, Pumpkinberry. I also stream variety games by day, and I haven't run D&D specifically on Table Story, but I've done a couple of horror shows, and right now I'm doing like a surreal sci-fi thriller. So I kind of run weird new systems, or really old, abandoned ones. That's kind of my jam. But yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to start with kind of a history in what streaming tabletop and D&D has looked like on Twitch. How long have you guys been doing this for, and what was it like when you started?
I don't know how long you've been doing it for.
It was my 2-year anniversary like a week ago with you. Yeah. So
all right,
2 years for me.
Something I should know.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't there for it. Clearly, I wasn't invited to the party. So.
There was no party. I just
okay.
October
I'm sure there
13th.
wasn't.
Yeah. I don't know how long you've been doing it.
Well, you've been playing D&D and tabletop stuff like way longer than me.
Yeah,
but I've been streaming it for longer than you.
Yes, right? That's correct. Yeah,
that's where people get confused with us, I think.
Yeah,
I started because I saw D&D on Twitch. By the way, that's how I started doing D&D streams, and I've never even played D&D IRL. I've only ever done it online, pretty much exclusively on streams.
Right?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That is very surprising.
Yeah.
Right, but I came into it quite late. I actually only started in 2015, and I was watching a stream by Koibu, if you've met or know Koibu at all.
Mhm.
Quite the traditional, old school, orthodox D&D DM, I would say, it would be fair to say. And I watched one of his streams and was like, what are they doing? Like, what's happening? I didn't really know what D&D was, apart from some kind of vague ideas from maybe TV and stuff. And I kind of watched it like I had no idea what they were doing. I just was watching this thing where a bunch of people were rolling dice and role playing, and I was like, this is kind of weird and kind of cringy. What the hell are they
What are they
doing?
doing?
And then I found myself being like, no, wait, this is my favorite thing. And then I watched the whole thing. I just didn't stop watching it until I had decided to play a game. And then I found a friend of mine, Matt, known as Captain Crail on Twitch, and said to him, you play D&D, right? Do you know anyone who can run a game for me? And then he set up a game with his friend and superstar YouTuber Ashens and the person that I pay to appear as my wife online. We all played a game. It sounds confusing, I know, but it's a very simple exchange. It's money. She's really hot. She looks good next to me online, but really, in real life, she wants nothing to do with me. And we all played on a. That's a joke. Everything I say is silly.
We're gonna have to yank him off the show if he's doing this. Or I get the hook ready.
My lovely wife, Emma Pickles. We all played a game together, and I just decided to stream it because I just don't know how to do anything in real life sometimes. And I was like, I guess I'll just stream it and just try and set something up on my Twitch channel that I was barely using. I wasn't a Twitch streamer at the time. I was kind of more on the YouTube side of things, and that ended up just being a kind of fun thing that we did. And that was that was like 2015. And then I wanted to play a second game. Nobody would GM for it. So I just picked up the book and figured out how to do it myself.
The way it goes. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
So that's my entire story. I know it's like really, really long and there was some lies in there. But
I like that particular element of like, and it was an immediate twist from, oh, this is so cringy watching it. Like, what is happening to, I want to do this and only this. This is the entirety of my being now.
I wasn't really sure what was really happening, which I think happens to a lot of people when they just jump into a D&D game halfway through a show, maybe.
In chat. They're like, what's happening? Is this scripted? Like, what are they doing? You know,
what is going on? And I felt exactly the same way. Because you just don't know. And there's just a bunch of people putting on silly accents, and some people are dressed up and they're just, talking in character to each other, and it's all improv based. So it's really weird to just walk into halfway through. If you just opened the door and there was a bunch of people playing D&D, but you didn't see the board and all the dice and stuff, you'd just be like, what are you all doing?
What's happening
here? And I think that that's kind of what happened to me a little, but it didn't take me too long to kind of figure it out. And then, then I kind of put two and two together and realized that I wanted to do it as well. I'm a massive Final Fantasy fan, and I just kind of wanted to tell stories similar to that. I realized I was like, I can finally play this game that's been knocking about in my head since I was 14 in some form. And so I just started to write my own. That's all I do, by the way. I just write my own kind of Final Fantasy games, and then I rip off a load of Final Fantasy games, and everyone goes, wow, it was so good, Brad. Where did you get the ideas for that? And I'm like, my head.
I'm just that good.
It definitely wasn't just a complete rip-off of one of the scenes from Final Fantasy 9. That's kind of how it went at the beginning. I kind of just saw it. It's weird how it came from Twitch. And it's just kind of done this full circle thing. And I haven't really left Twitch with D&D. It's just all been on this platform, really.
So what did it look like back in the day when you first started doing it?
The olden days.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, there's not like too much of a difference in terms of just the basics. I mean, it's not too indifferent to what you've got going on here. We're all on like a call. It'd be Zoom or Skype or Ninja or whatever it is. An overlay on OBS just to make it look a little better. And the only real difference that we have here on your setup is that we might have a dice roller in the middle, or maybe a thing to show a map or a battle map or something. Usually people use Fantasy Grounds, or we use Roll20. and it really isn't too different. I think some of the elements that have changed in the industry, you have just these giants like Crit Roll who have like a little bit of a different setup where they have it being live and they have like, well, no, it's not live, but like
In person.
They're at the table together, in person.
they have like a studio and they have kind of a studio setup. But with regards to kind of the way that we've always done stuff through calls, they back in the day, they kind of had the same thing. I'd say the only difference between now and then is just some levels of quality, and for us on Table Story, I think is just production levels of quality, because I come from like a relative production background, editing and some animation-y things and stuff like that. So I've just kind of been into that, and I really wanted to inject extra elements. I found that when I was watching shows on other channels before, they didn't have things like music or sound effects be too prominent. It was more just I mentioned orthodox because it very much was just like dice rolls and calculations and, you know, how many arrows do you have left? And I'm not interested in that because I can't hold that much information in my head at one time. I like to just kind of tell a story. And I'm just a fan of production. I like having music and I like having sound effects if I can do them. I like it when stuff looks pretty on the screen. I like it when it sounds nice, when everyone has nice mics and stuff like that. It really helps me to immerse myself in the show. And I wanted to do that a little bit. So when I first started DMing, I was making sure that I was sourcing music a little bit. I was trying to get people to have as high a quality on their end as I could. To, you know, it's kind of hard to just be like, hey, buy an expensive microphone like me. But, you know, I kind of would do stuff like that. I remember eventually, like I said, I kind of was super into Final Fantasy, and any Final Fantasy fans will know that they come with like great music. I listen to the OSTs all the time, and I think a lot of fans do. So I commissioned somebody to make me an album that had like a battle theme, and a boss battle theme, and like a city theme, and a town theme, and an overworld theme, and stuff like that, because I just wanted that element in my game, and it ended up just being a production thing, which I think was one of the I most certainly didn't like. Wasn't the first person to do that or anything, but it's something that became a staple on Table Story for us.
Yep.
And
Part
we
of what
took forward.
sucked me in, because I had played in a couple of games elsewhere, and you guys invited me to a game, and the production quality was just so immersive and really good that, you know, that's how I fell into the Table Story hole, was that.
Yeah. And I think that element has changed a little, not just for us, but probably across the board.
Like setting new standards for production
people
and
I find
quality.
like they dress up more and stuff now. People weren't really cosplaying their characters.
Trailers are now popular all across the board. Yeah.
Pre-production stuff. Yeah. Advertisement, I guess, is what it is. Stuff like that has certainly changed. I know that we kind of set ourselves up a bit Netflixy.
Yeah.
Is kind of the aim. A little.
What do you mean?
This is more PB's department. PB came in, like, I was just flailing around and rolling dice, and then PB came in and was like, "What are you doing? This is almost good. Let me make it great." And now PB,
that's another lie. But I think Brad mentioned an orthodox game, and I think there are two types of tabletop streams or, you know, channels that will produce content. One is a very orthodox approach where you're sitting down and you're a fly on the wall watching a home game. And then there are other channels that are trying to tell you a story and entertain you through the table that's happening there. And
I think presentation.
Yeah. So there's music. There's like, you know, cast will cover their cams if they're not in the scene, and you know, it's a little bit more immersive. It's entertaining. It's like a show, and I think that's kind of where the Netflix comes in. Is that we get a lot of people that want to binge our shows that will come in and be like, I just started this show last week, and you know, it's I'm on episode 28 already, and so I think that's a direction that you guys were already going in before I joined, and it's part of why I really liked Table Story's approach, is because it was very cinematic, and that's kind of what I want to do. I want to tell stories too. and have
Cinematic.
it's like with cool like openers and you know the teasers and trailers and stuff. I love that. And it's interesting because it's like the biggest compliment for me is when somebody comes in and goes, "Is this scripted?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, we've done it." But I like the way tabletop adds chaos to it, because you can't write some of the stuff that happens in tabletop, right? Because a critical fail means, you know, your plan's derailed, or, you know, somebody loses an eye or something. And normally you probably wouldn't sit down and go, "Oh yeah, okay, this would be a great moment for everything to just fall to hell," you know? So I don't know. It's good. I like it for that reason, but I also like blending the cinematic approach to it. So
You will
Yeah, I
also
mean-
do stuff like, sorry, I just to chuck an extra thing in. We will take little sound clips or record things, or
yes.
I will edit together a short setting sting. So at the moment, I've got things when they switch from one area of the world that I've created to another, there'll be a little sting that comes up that just says where they are, and maybe with a piece
And
of
like
background up.
That's cool.
art and stuff. Yeah.
TV will do stuff like there's a lot of you'll have like an audio thing play. So we will speak to a character about something that's not even there. They'll just be maybe they're dead or something, or
Yeah.
they've vanished or whatever. They left behind a tape recorder, and somebody will find it and hit play, or it will just happen. And all of that stuff like kind of lends itself to an extreme sense of immersion, which and is also an added cinematic value.
Yeah.
And I think
And
like little things like that. on
we've
the
also had
production side.
moments where the players get so into it that they also then bring the immersion. Like I'm recalling one specific scene in Nocturne, which was a horror show that I GM'd, where they were alone in the dark and they were in the woods and they were using their phone for their lights, and the cast, without, I didn't say anything, they all just turned their lights off and pulled out their phones and were using it as they were, you know, playing together. And that's really cool. That's something that I don't really see elsewhere, because I think you need that base immersion for players to feel like, okay, you've gone the extra mile for us to feel in the world. Now it's just natural for us to want to play in the space that you've created for us. So I
And
think
it's so important for the viewers too, because, you know, especially if you're jumping in the middle of it, like
yeah.
D&D can be really hard to pay attention to for a long period of time if it's kind of dry, right? Like it's
Definitely.
It's horrifically
nothing
difficult.
Yeah, about it, right?
Let's be honest, it's horrifically difficult to watch unless it's your friends that you're watching. For the most part, because it
Even
can
then,
be,
I'll definitely turn it off.
yeah, it can still be pretty dry. And I think that's probably one of our biggest challenges, I think, is how do we make this like engaging and entertaining, and how do we Princess Bride skip the boring parts? Yeah. So
I imagine it's a universal difficulty that everybody who does this struggles with exactly that same thing.
For sure. So
like-
what can you do to keep the viewers engaged?
Well, I think if it depends on if you're going to do a at-home game, like, you know, Critical Role style, where you've got everybody sitting together, you know, you're going to have different limitations, whereas or restrictions. Like we have a restriction because we're not in the same room. Our players cannot like interact with each other, but there's cool ways in which we can bring that immersion, like with covering the cams, or, you know, players will put filters on when they're like not doing well, or they'll be doing their own production effects. Do you remember when,
Interesting.
yeah, like Speth did this one where she was surfacing from the water and she was breathing, and like I want to say it was borderline a panic attack, and it was blurring and unblurring as she was like, it was really good. And she did that all on her own, no prompting. And it's like, well, you can't do stuff like that when you're in a room together. So it's just like, you know, but there's stuff we can't do because we're not in a room together. So I think it's just like decide what you're going to do, whether it's going to have a studio space or be in a digital space, and then utilize the heck out of what you actually have in the space.
Into the uniqueness of whatever that format is.
Yeah, which is same for broadcasting too. Lean into your unique, you know, whatever you bring to the table. But yeah, I think cutting the fat is probably the biggest thing that we do to keep the audience engaged, which is like, we will, if something comes up and we don't know the rule, the GM will just be like, okay, well, it's this for right now, so that we can move on, so that we're not looking it up in the book for 5 minutes and not stopping the role play entirely to just be like, okay, yeah, what is that? Let's look that up. The GM just makes a house rule and we move on. What are some other things that we do to keep the pace up, Brad? I think that's probably the main one, right?
Yeah, I think that really is like a mainstay for the channel, is just cutting the fat. Like anything that just seems to be quite boring. For example, in D&D, I hate travel stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Like sometimes you'll find that you need to do it, so you just kind of have to figure it out. But a lot of the time, I will just fast forward through it. It's like, hey, you travel. You know that scene in Lord of the Rings where they're just running across the field for like 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Do that, but it's not 10 minutes. It's just you ran across the field and now you're here. And
Yeah.
like, it's not quite as instant as that. But I think stuff like that, cutting things out that just seem to drone on or might be a little repetitive. Yeah, I think keeping people's attention is a lot easier to do if one of your main focuses is immersion, because you're immersed. So your attention, when you're watching a scene on TV that is gripping or interesting, you don't wander off and look at your phone or whatever. You watch it and then
You're not even
afterwards
aware that you're
Yes, that you're
Right.
arrested.
Yeah, so it's really it really comes down to that. I think we're really fortunate though. We have a lot of really strong role players that are interested
Yes.
in playing with us, and that we cast for shows. And so quite a lot of the time, it's just like the, the cast of people. They're doing so well at interacting
Yes.
with each other and playing their characters. They're not looking at like their numbers on their sheet as much as thinking about how this character might respond to something. And I think a lot of the time, that's almost just like a virus that seems to pass through the cast. Like, we're not
Yeah.
often having to direct people necessarily. It's just that one cast member will lift another, and then they'll
You don't
do
think
that.
that
And
stems from how we start, though?
probably, I
It
think
must
probably that.
stem from how we approach, like when we're starting a new show and people are, interested in being on that show, the GM's going to sit down and do like a session 0 that we don't stream, but like we'll sit down and talk about it. And I know you did this for me, and I know I do it, and Whack does it too, where we ask questions like, oh, okay, and how does your character feel about that? Or like, we're asking those questions in the very beginning instead of just giving them a sheet and then you show up day one. It's like,
Yeah.
players are invested because of the things that it's creating that sandbox or that park for them to play in and showing them all the cool stuff that, you're doing behind scenes. Or I think getting them invested in their character then makes the audience invested in their character too.
I
Right?
think we all do a lot of work
Yeah.
building up to the episode. There's a lot of pre-show stuff. So there's a lot of pre-production things or planning and stuff that we do. So it's not just kind of showing up and winging it.
Yeah.
Like, I think all of us at GM on the channel are really focused on thinking about stuff and writing something that's like a good piece, a set piece or a scene or a setup. You can't obviously write the script for the whole thing, but like, you say this and then you do that and your motivation is this, but you can kind
Sounds
of
like a lot of work. I mean, you might as well just be making a film at that point.
Right, yeah, there's no point in doing it, but you can still you can play to certain character strengths, or if they're in a certain place, you can show up. If they're in a jungle, you can just go, well, they're in a jungle, so I guess a lion attacks, you know what I mean? Or you can find something specific that will evoke certain things from certain characters, and it puts them in a position that they can role play their character in just this really immersive and effective way, and they're doing stuff that their character has to now think about or react to, as opposed to just, I shoot arrow kill thing, move
it
on.
opens up the space for them to be creative.
Yeah, and I think the way that we do that, I think we all do that as well, where we really watch our players, and we watch their interaction with their character and how their character interacts with the world and interfaces with everything else in the game, and then begin to build on that, as well as our own story and the show and the production and stuff like that. And that just really helps, because the players, it's like a trickle down effect. Like,
I think you're right, actually. I think it's player focused games. Because you have those games that are like, yeah. Well, you have the games that you sit down and it's clearly like, you're focusing on the module or, the story, or the GM has a plan. And so you're just kind of like playing along in that plan. Whereas I think you just for me anyway, hit the nail on the head that I didn't realize until now, is that ours are very player focused. We want the player to have the best time of their life. And that does trickle down into the audience, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
I know Brad, in fact, has thrown out like what he's written and rewritten stuff because of what the players are doing. Whereas a lot of GMs will just kind of tug you back in the right direction. Whereas we will just kind of weave around or move everything around for the players and what they're doing and kind of put them at the center of how we GM, which I think that's part of it. Yeah, for sure.
How much you were talking about, and this has come up several times in different ways, the prep work. How much prep work do you think is, like, as a general rule, an ideal amount? As opposed to like really overworking it and then handing, all the players this, like, heavily
Novel.
scripted, we're going point by point through this thing versus the let's just wing it and see what happens.
Yeah. Brad,
I think
you wanna take
split
this
the
one?
difference. If you're relatively experienced and you're kind of in it and you're running a thing and you're kind of you kind of know what you're doing. I think if you're just starting out, though, weirdly enough, I'd say like less prep is better.
Yes, I agree with that.
I think production-wise, it's no different than just doing your first ever stream. No one knows what OBS is. It's the craziest looking thing in the world the first time you open it up and you figure out how to capture a game, or where's the webcam coming out? Why is there no sound?
I still do that constantly.
Yeah, I do it every single day. But I think that kind of stuff you can figure out a basic overlay and how you want to capture maybe your players' cameras and the thing that you're playing on or with. You might be rolling in real life, but depending on all that stuff, it's relatively simplistic if you understand OBS. Outside of that, when it comes to the actual DM prep, the thing with, and I can speak more to Dungeons and Dragons than anything else, but people will over prep like crazy because it's kind of just anxiety and fear that you're going to let everyone down. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to enjoy this. And what if they ask me about the king? Well, I need to write the king's entire lineage and backstory now. And you write and then you're like, well, if he's the king for this long, then who was the king before? Oh, that was a different kingdom. Okay, so we need another kingdom. Now I've built an entire world and everything. All you need is like a room.
All you need is a name generator. When someone asks you who the king is, you go click, and then you go, that's who he is, and you just make it up on the spot or fill it in later, right?
All right. But I think people over prep because you're worried about like letting people down or maybe just not knowing enough because you've never done it before. And over prepping is a really bad thing in the beginning because you'll never use any of it. And even in the end, you probably won't use any of it.
You'll feel obligated to use it because you've already created it, which can be deadly.
And then
that's what I was thinking too, is like that it's likely to lead to a lot of disappointment and resentment when the players, something happens or they want to take it in their own kind of personalized direction, and it's destroyed the 87 hours of prep work that you did over preparing.
So I think you make a really good point that I want to address is I think a lot of GMs go into it thinking like I've prepared this story in this world and the players are going to go and explore that. But at least with Table Story, it's a collaborative storytelling game. Like it's just as much your player's story as yours. I mean, yes, you have a lot more prep. You give them things and they kind of like run with it. But I think if you approach it more as, I'm going to make up bullet points. I'm going to think of themes. Like, what do I want my players feeling? Where do I want the character growth to maybe kind of go? And then bullet points of cool scenes that you want to introduce, and then nail your first episode. Like think, okay, session 1, what do I really want to happen in this session? Like what's my hook to get them hooked? And then what's my twist if you're going to do a twist? Like those kinds of things. And then the rest of it, you can return after, if you're streaming every week, then, you have an entire week to come up with what kind of situations that you want to put them in next week. But at least that way you're going into it going, I'm giving for you, and then wait for them to give back to you. And then it's an equal, like give and take kind of relationship. And it's way more fulfilling. And you cannot be disappointed if you go into it thinking like, what are they going to bring to me that I then get to build off of instead of, you've killed my boy, like I think, I
Look
think
how they
it's,
massacred my boy.
yeah.
I think Hunter, you were touching on a thing that like in D&D world and tabletop world, they call it railroading, which is when you sort of take away a player agency and force them to do your story and go to the place that you want them to go. And there's many different arguments out there for and against versions of railroading and open world and player agency and stuff like that. I'm a pretty big fan of player agency and trying to play into that. I also have found that every single time I've prepared an entire kingdom that's on the right, they go left and there's nothing prepared for it.
Why
every
don't
time.
you just move the kingdom? This blows my mind.
Well, because I've explained. I'm like, the kingdom of, Dalmatia is over there, and the king is waiting for you. Your guide, Garen, is waiting. And they go, oh, yeah? Oh, well, I don't like Garen. Oh, who's that? And I'm like, his name is
Click.
Barrier.
The generator.
And they go, well, where's he going? And I'm like, into the swamp of butt cheeks. Oh, no. And that's the big swamp, and it smells bad. You don't want to go in there. We want to go in there. Oh, okay.
That's where I want to go.
Yeah, there's a witch, and that's then that's just kind of a thing. And you have to learn how to like relinquish a lot of control, which is weird when you're the GM because you're so in control. You're like a god,
and they look at you for the guiding posts, and
you are the lens through which everything is being seen, and it is frightening to go into that unprepared, but you will find that you over prepare when it comes to sessions and stuff almost every single time. I think when you've been doing it a little longer though, you'll start to prepare correctly or somewhere near the right amount, because we over prepare in a different way. Like me and PB, I know, do stuff like where we will add like themes, like a thematic journey underneath everything. Like there will be a story about something else. I had an entire campaign that was to do with sort of feeling chained to something or being
beholden to kind of like someone else's desires or wills, I guess, right?
Right. And then what happens when you break free from that, and then you're presented with another set of shackles that might if you don't put these shackles on, the world's going to end, but also you've just broken free, and then how do you go with that? And then just watching stuff like that in characters starts to give you this really deep perspective on them. My newest campaign has been all about power and where that leads characters, and how to break free from that on just a macro level, systemic and cyclical power. Not to make this political, but like
is Foucault like DMing this?
And like so when you kind of relinquish your need for your own control over what's going on, and allow a little bit more of an unprepared approach, you can look at things on a slightly larger level, I think, as well, and you can really start to have fun with long form content. And we're talking long form as in 3-4 hour episodal shows that go on for a year. And you can look at it on multiple different levels. I think we do that pretty well on Table Story as well, but it's taken a couple of years of just refining and learning that. So one thing to do as well.
Different lengths of
we've done everything.
Play. Yeah, you've tried everything. But by the time I joined, it was the 3 hours, which and one of my shows is 2.5 right now, which I really dig. I really like for some reason that extra half hour gone makes it really
it's
like
extremely role play heavy, and if you want an extremely role play heavy show, sometimes a shorter amount of time is required. If you've got a lot more dice rolls and mechanics, you need to allow for time to explain and work through those rolls and stuff. The point I was going to make though is that if you're starting a show for the first time, or you're looking at making a D&D show or a tabletop thing, or on your Twitch channel or on a YouTube show or something like that, and then you look at someone like Critical Role, or you even look at like Table Story or something, and then you try and emulate it, it's probably going to be a bad idea. I'd recommend you start off really simple, very nice, simple, clean overlay maybe. Just get some people that you can trust to show up every week, that seem interested. Prepare a nice, basic, simple campaign. Maybe run a module that exists out there somewhere, and just go. And don't try and do all this like crazy overproduction. Between
Grow
all of
into
us on
that,
TableSquare,
yeah.
we've all got like years. I've got like 15 years of editing skills in my 7 IQ brain. That's just like it's like a muscle memory to me now. So
Yeah.
Right.
it's not something that I would be able to just pick up. It's like if you're like, oh, Brad, just jump into a UFC ring
Yeah.
and go because you've been watching it for a long time. You can do it, right? It's like, no.
No.
No, I'm sure it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
PB, you had something you wanted to
Oh,
interject.
yeah. The other thing too, big advice if you're just starting out, is communicate with your players, because there are some people who want to play orthodox and then there are some people who want to role play. So, making sure, like, behind the scenes, what you don't see is, when you reach out to people and be like, hey, I'm interested in running this type of game with these themes. Like, is this something that you're interested in? I'm thinking it'll be, mechanics light, really role play heavy, like gonna get super into it. What do you think? That way you're not pulling people to the table who don't want to role play, or people who really all they want to do is role play, and you're doing a straight up orthodox game. So yeah, definitely communicate way ahead of time. And of course, if you're doing like, a darker show like Nocturne and stuff like that, you want to communicate, where this show might be going and like where the red lines are and that kind of stuff. So you're not surprising your players or causing them to go into therapy.
Very important.
Yeah.
Maybe did that to me.
I did that to him, yes.
What was that one? PB, do you remember this? I think I complimented you about it so very much in a way that made you uncomfortable, because I was just like keeping so much praise.
I want to say it was Nocturne, but it might have been Stygian Gate, which that's what Brad's talking about with the therapy thing.
It was fascinating, but that does seem like it was like a very intense psychological horror thing, that it seems really important that everybody's on the same page for what to expect to come out of this and how to mentally prepare.
And viewers too, right? Like we had a warning at the beginning of that stream to be like, hey, prepare. I'm trying to think of all the like advice I can give to people who want to start stuff. And so communication to players, communication to the audience, stuff like that. And just knowing that, as you're building a community that wants to watch your shows, remember that not everyone is going to want to watch the same thing. And that's like totally wonderful and beautiful. And that doesn't mean that, like, if one show you're not seeing as many people there, it doesn't necessarily mean that that show is bad. It's just maybe a niche show, and it's good to do that stuff once in a while. And yeah, not everybody's going to like everything. So variety is really good. Like, we've got a Harry Potter show, we've got, a horror show, and we've got, surreal sci-fi. Who are we all really? And then the fantasy D&D and stuff. So, we've got a little bit of everything, yeah.
So in terms of scheduling, you have to coordinate with your players, make sure everyone can meet. I'm assuming one show starts at the same time once a week, and you said you've trimmed it down to like 2.5 to 3 hours.
Yes.
Is that usually the formula you use for your shows?
Yeah, 3 hours, I'd say. And then lately, we didn't always used to do this. We used to just pick the time based on the group of people that wanted to play, what was the best time for them. But I'd say within the last year, we tend to be around the same time slot, which is at 4 p.m. And that's just like people who reach out to us to, play, they're expecting that time now. So they're like, I can make time, or I can change my schedule to be around that like 4 p.m. Eastern time slot. But we'll still move it depending on the cast that wants to play, whatever's easier for them. But
it seems like a really good way to go is finding people for the time slot instead of finding a time slot for the people.
Yeah, it's harder to do the time slot for the people, but sometimes it's, like, it's worth it. We want to play with everybody, and we've got a lot of people that want to play with us. So it's just like, anybody that reaches out and says like, hey, I'm really interested in, this type of show, and, I saw this horror show and I want to do that, or, fantasy. It's good to kind of, make space for them if they want to play. Usually that's the type of player that's going to get really into it and put on a great performance, is because they just are like really excited to be involved. Yeah.
I feel like that consistency also helps from a viewer standpoint, because they know to tune in the channel at this time, especially when you're doing You guys do what? One show a day, 2 a day? Like
No, one a day. Yeah, we do one a day, and then I think we do get a lot of people that will try shows that they might not normally be interested in because they're expecting table story production quality, and we have gotten comments like, "Wow, this isn't normally my jam, but I totally dig this now. I'm so glad I tried it."
Cool.
Stuff like that. So it is rewarding when we see that.
Now,
nice.
there's a question that I've been holding that's been like reformulated because of the context of these interesting points that y'all keep bringing up, but now it's related to timing and scheduling. It's gone through so many iterations. Do you think it's is it a worthwhile recommendation for people who are starting out, trying to put on role-playing shows, to maybe shoot for a one-shot or an extraordinarily limited run kind of thing, where it's like, we're going to do 3 or 4 episodes only just to get their feet wet, see how it goes, see what mistakes can be adjusted, as opposed to expecting a 2-year long campaign that they're, as the first run into this endeavor.
Right. Well, I also as from a viewer retention standpoint,
Sure.
I don't know how much growth you're going to get off episode 70 of a show.
Yeah.
No one's going to want to come in at episode 70,
312. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely probably not 312, but we do have people come in new each week that's like, what's going on? And then they end up staying and then binge watching the rest all the way up till that point. So, but honestly, my advice for that is don't put an end goal in sight. And actually, it is so much harder to do a 1-shot sometimes, or a 3-shot, or a 5 episode miniseries than GMing something longer. Like when you hit the points, you hit the points.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you have to pack, you have to have your climax and rising action and conclusion. Like you have to plan all that out. And I think it takes a little bit of experience if you're coming from a show standpoint. Yeah. If you're trying to do a cinematic approach to storytelling, then yes, it's probably a little bit more difficult to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it in 5 episodes. But I would just recommend not putting a cap on it. Don't think a year long, but don't necessarily say I need it to be done in 3. Just feel it out, and then you'll know when you hit the climax, and when everybody's feeling great about the show and when it's time to end. I think generally speaking, you can kind of tell, and then communicating with your players too, like how are we feeling about this? Like, I feel like we're towards the end. Like, are you guys ready to just say goodbye to your characters and whatnot? And they'll let you know too.
Or kill them all.
Yeah, or kill everyone. Yep.
That will end a thing.
Kill your darlings.
That'll do it.
Yeah, they might walk into the wrong cave when they turn left that day.
Yeah, shout out to Zelda.
You really have a thing with left turns.
He's directly attacking me. He's directly attacking me because I am in the campaign, and I should have known, my character should have known that the town that we were to go to was to the right, and I took us left. So that's what's been happening this whole time.
It happens. No, but you will run into stuff because it is random. There is elements of the game that are rolled on a dice that you can't predict, which makes it fun. It remains a game. That's the difference between it and a scripted show or something you're watching on TV, or a book or a game. And you will find that these elements will just dramatically change everything. You'll go into one episode thinking it's going to go one way, and then at the end of it, you're like, "Oh, we're 3 episodes from the end," and I thought we were halfway through the campaign.
Yeah,
it can happen. It will happen, and you just have to kind of roll with the changes.
Oh, yes, and that's super good advice. It's improv advice, so not everybody comes from theater background, but your players to say yes and you as a GM to say yes and, right? Like if your player wants to do something.
Yeah, unless they want to fly at level 1. They're like, oh, I have a flaming sword and I can fly and you split the world in 2, right? Then it's no.
Please stop attacking me. I really wanted to fly, okay? Like
you have to be that's back to rules and how lenient you want to be on that, and finding that line between rules and just.
We actually had a question in the chat about that. I don't know if you want to tackle this, Brad, but what do you think of the attunement rule and or house rules that you would generally modify? in
Oh, I'm
5e?
nothing but house rules. That's
Yeah.
all I am. I'm just all house rules and changes on the fly and things like that. The attunement rule I think is excellent and makes complete sense. I've never used it. I I think it makes sense, and it's because stuff is OP and you need to. So the attunement rule means that for the most part, imagine you find a really powerful sword, for example. You can't just pick it up and swing it and it uses its power immediately. You would have to. Usually, you spend a day with it, like you normally do a rest in game, and then you will attune to it, and that'll allow you to use whatever imbued power it
You
has.
gotta let it trust you.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Pet it a little bit.
Sing a
Yeah, and it's
song.
good for like little
Wow.
loot goblins that go around killing vendors and stealing all of their wares just to get loads of stuff. Murder hobos are all over the place.
Right.
But when you're doing a show, that cut the fat thing comes back, I think, with attunement and rests and stuff. I quite often will just come up with some reason as to why you are able to feel good today. I often plan around not doing rests and things because it's just it's a bog down of time and momentum and role play. It's not that I won't do it. It's just that I find that sitting, going to the book and checking that you can attune to things and doing a rest and calculating how much HP you have is important to a degree.
That's a half an hour of your showtime.
But it's a lot of showtime that you really need to be trying to progress through to get stuff done. People sitting around watching a bunch of people calculate how many arrows they've got left is not as fun as when they're using those arrows to take on a god. And I much prefer the part where people are fighting a god when they're counting their arrows. So I always find myself in a weird position. I would really love to play in a kind of rules-heavy campaign where I have to really keep an eye on how many torches I have and whether I've got any water left in my canteen and I'm in the desert and something like that. But I find that with our shows in particular, it just doesn't work very well. That's when you'll see people kind of nodding off and checking their phones and
Maybe
things.
you can have like a party accountant whose sole job it is to keep track.
Yeah, and a lot of people do that. You just have a never-ending quiver of arrows, kind of. And I just say to people, like, generally just role play it as if you're aware of the fact that you have to buy arrows and things. I'm not going to be really on you about gold and stuff like that because I'm very
Unless you want to
rules-like.
buy like an owl or something,
If you want to buy something ridiculous, then we're gonna count your gold. Okay? If you're gonna buy a pet dragon that's gonna be stronger than all of the party combined, then yeah. But for the most part, with just your basic upkeep and stuff like that, I don't do it. I've never really done attunement. If you find a cool thing, I've probably put it there for you to find anyway. So you're attuned to it. You just pick it up and you've got Excalibur now. So yeah, it's a weird thing. I think it's just something that we do on Table Story. And by the way, we mentioned stuff like orthodox play and rules-heavy games, and we do very immersive RP-based, very rules-like games. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah, they're just two different styles.
For a show or anything like that. This is just how we do it. So we can only really speak, I think, to doing things our way, I guess. But I've never really been too rules heavy. I will do it from time to time, and sometimes you have a player who wants to play by the rules more, so I will amp up the rules just at the table. Sometimes you have a split group, you have 5 people, and they all have a completely different play style, and you have to kind of lean into each of your players at the table so that everyone's having fun. And then that's you spinning plates, and there's a balance to that when you're GMing, and yeah, so you just got to be aware of it. I think. I go very back and forth on the rules with D&D to the point where in this last campaign I ran, I really just didn't have any by the end of it. It wasn't even D&D anymore. But also,
but he's not kidding.
I was purposefully getting silly though because I wanted the campaign to start off being very rules kind of on like orthodox and rules heavy, so that by the end, when you were kind of bloated and silly with power, it fit into my little power theme of how you had swelled in power, because then I was going to take it from them, which is what I did.
Which is what you did, and it's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
And it's all about craving power and becoming too powerful, like that. So that was a thing that I actually played with thematically, because people came to know me as being quite easygoing with the rules and not really caring and stuff like that. So I thought I
Subvert
was just
those expectations.
being ridiculous by the end of it by subverting everyone's expectations and not in the Rian Johnson way, okay? Before you accuse me of ruining Star Wars. Moving on to the next question.
Well, I wanted to kind of touch on that because I think one consideration that people need to make is that you are streaming it. It is a show, and you're probably going into it with the idea that you want people to watch it, and so you have to make sure that that type of content is consumable.
Yeah.
Are there any other considerations, like, or tweaks, whether to the game itself or to the production or to the planning, that you guys have to make to because you are streaming it?
It's a weird one, yeah.
Yeah, that is strange. I
Loco asked a weird question this time.
yeah, I think
It's like I can think of reasons yes and no, kinda. I
yeah.
also see that you can, so I'll let you speak for once.
Well, just the crunchiness, right? Like if it's too crunchy, we probably are like, oh, that's too crunchy of a system for us. Mechanic heavy, a lot of rules to go through, a lot for the players to pick up before they jump in and play. So if it's too crunchy, sometimes we will avoid it because we just have to remove so much. We also still want to do right by the system too. We don't want to just hack it to death and then it's like unrecognizable. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the only consideration is if there's going to be a lot of stopping to, look at the mechanics or learn the rules, then we try to avoid that, I'd say.
Which, weirdly enough, because when you framed it from the viewer perspective, a lot of people come in and they expect a certain thing. They expect their version of D&D that they play at home to be on the screen, and they might find something different. Some people find that frustrating. Some people find it awesome. It's just a matter of taste sometimes.
Sure.
And that's just how it is. Sometimes people will some people have been frustrated with me for doing rules wrong and for purposefully not using attunement or something like that. They're like, this isn't how it works. And I'm like, well, it is for me. And to the point where we were kind of memeing it, and because we've been playing D&D 5e, we were saying it's D&D 5e light BradWOTO version because it's just so.
Oh, that really got a lot of.
It just became this thing that was almost. Well, it wasn't unrecognizable, but I really just was kind of playing fast and loose with the rules. And that is not entirely just on me being some sort of creative genius like I'm making myself out to be, which I'm so not. A lot of it is just that I read the rules 5 years ago and never again. And so the trace decay on what I actually know, a lot of it is gone. And where I've realized over the years that I don't need to know exactly every single rule to the letter in the book to run this game, because I would like it to just be a show and be fun. And I quite often skip over a rule just to keep the momentum going in a scene. It's like, we don't need to know the thing. I'll look it up later on.
Yeah, go on. Remind you to do your combat, though. He does know every rule for combat, and he takes that very seriously, because if a player dies, then it's like, point.
Yeah, when you're going back to the player agency thing, there's nothing worse than when you die to a dumb rule. I don't know if I can swear on this show. So a dumb ruling. Well, I can be clean. I'll try. The GM will maybe not know a rule, or they'll just skip over something, or they'll bend a rule in such a way that it has a short domino effect on your character being eaten, and then your character is permanent, and it's awful. There's nothing worse than that. And so I've always found that outside of combat, I'm extremely loose with the rules to the point where there barely are any. But in combat, I try
and everybody's working together, right? But in combat,
it's turn-based. Your character is you're restricting the players to a set of rules, and it's unfair to suddenly change those up in any way. So for the most part, I've tried to keep the rules pretty on the nose for combat, just to keep it fair, so that it's always a fair playing field and no one ever feels kind of slighted. That will go back and forth, though. People will just forget rules. people won't forget rules. Half the time, it's players forgetting rules. I'll be like, you have poison, don't forget. You have disadvantage on all your stuff. And then they immediately forget, so do I. They do the whole thing without poison. And then at the end, they go, well, you did that wrong, that one thing. And I'm like, you were poisoned the whole time. How dare. And, it's just, you kind of just, it's impossible. I mean, some people have like super brains and they can remember everything going on and they can spin all these plates, and some people can't. And you just have to kind of see how it goes. One of my rules is what's done is done.
Yes.
And if it's a slip of the
rule.
mind and you move on, there's no like rewinding 3 turns back to replay everything out because one of you forgot a thing.
Yeah.
There goes another half an hour of your show time.
Yes. And it just gets frustrating, and then it's a tug of war, and I'm not too much a fan of tug of war DM style where it's players versus DM. I want the players to win. I like it when they become strong and powerful and they're enjoying themselves. I like watching stuff where my main character's kind of OP, like in an anime when you're like, they can never lose. I kind of enjoy that. That's what I want. In real life, it's hard. I don't like real life that much. I want things to be awesome in my TV show and my movie. So I want my players to feel that way. But also it needs to be fun for them, and there needs to be challenges and stuff. So you want to facilitate that, and it's just a tightrope a little bit.
You do a great job of that, like making players feel like powerful and exciting, but then you also are very good at like ripping it away and making us cry, and just it's really good.
Do you guys usually work with like super experienced players, or do you bring on newbies?
Yeah, mix of both. So we'll sometimes have 2 brand new players who have never done it before. That's a lot of people who reach out to us right now to be on shows. Is like, I've never done it before, but this looks so cool and I want to try, and we love that. So absolutely, more people that want to play, the better.
Yeah, a mix and match is always good. I think it's nice to have an experienced player because sometimes you need the help. It's actually nicer for me when I have an experienced player to just say, what is that rule? And they go, it's this, rather than us stopping everything and I go and Google something, or I'm looking through the book. But then when you have newer players, they get that like wide-eyed, oh my God, this is amazing. I can I can
do
jump
anything.
10 feet. And you're like, you can jump 10 feet. Your strength score is amazing.
They also try different things, right? Like they'll try to break the rules, or they're kind of like, they're pushing on the walls of the sandbox, right? And, experienced players will, I've tried that in one other game and it doesn't work, or that's not how the rules are. So they don't even think to try it. So you get really cool things in your story when you've got people who've never played before.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. I have 2 questions. I'll see if I can remember the second one when we're done with this one. I know that one of the questions that has come up regularly that I've seen over the last couple of years from newer and experienced streamers is, should I start a separate account just for my D&D stuff, just for my role-playing stuff? What are your thoughts about keeping it on one person's channel, trading it, it's a different person's channel every week?
No.
Or creating a whole new account that's just dedicated to your role-playing stuff?
I think it kind of maybe depends on what you want to do. Like if it's just you and you want to run a game, I don't see why you wouldn't run that on your own channel. Like if, you want to do that, at least especially to start. That's how Table Story started, right?
Yeah,
Brad,
it was
you
all
and
on.
Jay were streaming separately your games, and then you both went, well, this is dumb. Why don't we just, do
They
it
were
together?
all on. The first thing I GM'd online was on my channel. The second thing was on John Sandman's channel, and the third thing was on Jay's channel, and then the fourth thing was on my channel, and that was the first thing under Table Story. No, the second thing under Table Story. God, it's so confusing. Then we did consolidate onto one channel because that was getting silly. It was just confusing, and people didn't know where to go. And people were coming to my channel in the middle of the day, going, "Where's the D&D?" And I was like, "I'm playing PUBG, dude. Get out!" And so it gets confusing, and people would go to one channel for one thing, and they get confused. It's hard to get an audience to go to just one place because people are coming in at all times of the day. Some people are watching VODs. Some people are just skipping through Twitter on a train home from work. So having everything in one place seemed like a really good idea eventually, because at first, when me and Jay started Table Story, we just had a conversation about D&D, and both of us were like, we love D&D. Both of us are kind of new GMs, and we just wanted to play We were like, let's just pull resources and make a game. We kind of did that. He wanted to run one, I wanted to run one, so we ran them on both of our channels eventually, and it just got annoying. Honestly, it was just annoying. So we were like, let's just come up with an umbrella name between the two of us. Jay came up with the name Table Story. It was fun. And we just started uploading the VODs to YouTube on that name. And then eventually we were like, it's going to be so much easier if we just have people who want to come to my channel for me, and PUBG or whatever I'm playing that day go to me, and people who go to Jay for whatever he was playing that day go to him. And then if they come to us for D&D, they actually just go somewhere else. And it ended up just being so much easier to direct people. There was no confusion. There was no split kind of audience in a way to send them over there.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Again, I think that's like, what you're trying to do or what you want to do, because at least with Table Story, it's like we've got multiple GMs that are, coming onto the channel and like running stuff. But if you're just starting out, I don't see the issue with like running, unless you're going to do like multiple shows and, that kind of thing. If you're just doing one D&D, if you're doing one show that you want to run, definitely do it on your own channel. Because I think you want, your existing audience that wants to see what you're creating, they're probably going to be interested in that.
Mhm.
And then I think just immediately starting a new channel from scratch without it, I think it will be heartbreaking if you're streaming in the D&D channel and you get like, if you have to do that all over again, because we've all
Yeah.
been there. Like you go on vacation. Yeah, you go on vacation, come back and you're like, whoa. So,
I know.
I wouldn't want that to happen with, like your brand new cool story.
It's
But
so deflating when you're doing this really interesting and fun thing.
Yeah. And so, definitely start out on your own channel unless you got multiple hands that really want to help shoulder the workload and the burden of running a whole second channel. Then definitely start out. Don't be afraid to just run
It does
something on your own
change the
channel.
dynamic. As soon as you put it onto its own thing, it becomes its own thing. It's no longer just like your channel. I get up, I sit down at my stream and hit start stream, and I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter if this gets cancelled.
Right.
Yeah.
But like with Table Story, there's a lot more responsibility. There's a lot more people involved that I don't want to let down and don't want to,
Right.
I'm sure it's similar here. It's probably no different to the way that you guys probably find setting up this. The same thing, finding streamers, wrangling some cats together, get them to go somewhere, and then the same with the audience. I know that some other streamers do split across each channel. They will just stream it to everyone's channel. I know that some people switch week to week. If it's a group of streamers. I don't know what that effect really has. I've never really looked into it or asked. I have no idea. We've always just had one channel because I just find it easier myself. And I think it's always just easier for people to know that there's just one place to go.
Yeah. Also,
This
it's such
type of
a
content. It's specific and singular.
sorry.
Yeah, go on.
It's just such a because it's a cinematic. It's like watching a TV show. The community aspect of it's really important. Like everybody's watching the show together and talking, and chats like flying. Like to me, it would feel weird to separate that or just make them have to fight to have that experience because it's such a cool experience. I don't want to make it harder for the audience to, have that experience or consume the content. So yeah.
I have a follow-up to this too. How has working on Table Story changed your priorities and your time management for, between Table Story and your own stream? Like, how have you been balancing that?
We had PB on the show.
Yeah. I think I can answer this for PB. PB prioritizes Table Story over everything in her life, probably just under animals and husband. And that's including food and sleep and
robots
and some, I don't know, we'd have to
I feel like robots might
to be honest, she's combined those two things quite well. It's it's hard. I mean, I've done the same thing with Table Story. It's almost like a passion project, right?
It is,
you're like, you're into it kinda, and it's one of the most fascinating things for me is being there from the first Skype call with Jay all the way up to this point where it's just become its own thing, to see that it's not, it's just been built by so many people, everyone that's been involved, notably Jay, PB, Wax Steven runs our day-to-day as well. There's another great GM who is a mainstay GM on the channel. We've had multiple GMs come and go. We've had all of these different cast members come in, but then there's this community of people that are just Table Stories community. They're not like mine that I recognize every name, and PBs and all the people that have
But
come
they'll
and gone.
go around, which I think is pretty magical. Like that community then will go and see all the players of the show, and it's really cool.
It's really interesting to see something like that build from the beginning, and it's awesome as well, just to see, because you have one foot in, but you also have one foot out. Whereas when you see your own thing, you're just looking at your own metrics, going, "Oh well, today's the day; it's over." But when you're kind of a little set apart and watching it build, and you see everybody else doing their best and building with it, it's so cool. Also, I find Twitch, and this is slightly off topic maybe, but Twitch, I come from a YouTube background. I was like a YouTuber that came over here. I'm an interloper, really. And
That's what I've always heard about you.
Yeah, he's an alien. And the thing I found with YouTube back in the day, early 2010 to 2015 era of YouTube, was that collaboration was so impactful and simple, and it would grow your channel massively, and it wouldn't matter really the size of the person you were collaborating with or whatever. Do a couple of videos with someone and the collaboration effects are immediate and obvious. Whereas I find that collaboration on Twitch is quite hard to do. And even if you do it, people still just watch. If two people are streaming a game, people still just watch the one streamer that they're used to, and your audience remains your audience. It's just a co-stream. And collaboration is really not necessarily, I don't have a very great business brain. I kind of just wing everything, but like collaboration just doesn't seem to be as directly effective for growth on viewership and stuff. But I do think that when you have a community of people that's as strong as we have on Table Story, all of the cast members are really into it, and everybody on each show are there for multiple weeks. You do see a kind of a blend out. There does seem to be this nice boost to everybody's audiences, and people will blend audiences. And we've seen some much smaller streamers grow a little bit, and I think it is partially thanks to the cast, whoever that happens to be on the show that they're on, collaborating in such a unique way, other than just one or two co-streams every now and then.
I think it's
so
the
that's
face.
something I find to be really interesting. What, your face does it?
No, it's the face. The face. It's the fact that they can see everyone's face and they can see how everybody else is reacting to each other, and the show can be emotional, so you connect. It's different.
Yeah.
Like when I'm watching somebody co-stream and I only hear a voice, like I'll be like, "Oh, that person's funny," but like I think it's different when you can see everybody's face.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Very rarely, I think, do we have people that are on a show to grow or for exposure or whatever the hell. I don't think anyone thinks like that, but I do think it's a fringe benefit of it that you see, which I've found to be kind of hard to do on Twitch. Or at least I've never seen it to be too effective, I guess. Like the collaborative cross-pollination of audiences. I don't know what words I'm using right now, but I'm not sure. But it just seems like a thing that I've noticed that I'm really happy about. It's so cool to see all these people that have come together to work on a show on Table Story, and then they've all got some benefit out of it. It's like just a really interesting extra thing that I think had a point at the beginning.
Prioritization. So do you still stream like consistently on your own channel?
Yeah.
I mean, but like Brad said, I'm more like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I got hit by a car and I was like, I'm still good to GM. Like I'm still fine to GM. I'm not going to cancel the show. Whereas like on my own channel, I'd been like, y'all, I got hit by a car and I will see you tomorrow or whatever. But yeah, I think it's Yeah, we do
That's
still
probably. I
try
feel
and
like that's
stream.
partially because you don't want to let the other people down that
Yes,
have
of
taken
course.
time
It's
out
the
that week.
crippling, yeah, they're all looking forward to playing and I can't, and the whole audience is looking forward to the show. And it was the day of the show that I got hit. So I was like, oh God, I can't just like cancel it right now. But I guess I can,
What?
I feel like it's a valid reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bibi doesn't understand that though. She's a paladin, level 13 paladin. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing. I'm fortunate enough that I stream earlier than the table story shows every day. My schedule
Yeah,
just
I have moved
earlier,
my
so-
schedule because of Table Story. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I really never have to go forfeit my own stream time, but I do often have to stream twice in a day, which can sometimes be quite taxing when you do like a usual stream. I'm not like the highest energy streamer, but it's still not the easiest thing to do a full stream, and your energy is on, and then you stop, you eat some food, and then you go back in.
Yeah.
And often I'm GMing some of those nights as well. So it's like I end my stream by, and then I'm prepping, and then I'm eating
You
and
get that-
prepping, and then
Do you get that like exhaustion after you eat after a stream though?
I hate eating. And eating makes my energy drop.
That's
like, a
what I
huge
mean.
amount.
Yeah. Like if
Yeah.
I eat, that's why I go
never-
the whole day without it. Like I'll eat
That's
in the
why I started
morning.
doing the intermittent fasting
Yeah.
thing. So I was like, oh, if
Yeah.
I don't eat that one chocolate bar in the morning, I will be healthier.
Yeah.
And I can just do it's the exact amount of time for hours for intermittent fasting. I ended up starting doing that.
That's
but
bad.
yeah,
Everyone please eat, like for crying out loud.
if you do it correctly. I don't know. That's a whole other thing. You join us on StreamerSquare next week for intermittent fasting advice.
I would not bring you guys on for health tips. I mean,
No,
yeah.
do not bring me on for health.
Don't-
My
No,
God.
absolutely do not do that.
You guys are not good examples.
No.
No, not at all. But yeah, I think the weird thing is that we will end up kind of going pulling
Yeah.
double shifts. It feels like kind of some days, and you go in for it. And there's also just a thing where you're GMing where you're kind of a little bit always thinking about it.
Yeah.
You're all building up to your next game, and kind of you come up with something at 3 a.m. and you go and type it up or
Yeah.
prepare it, and you're in Roll20 dynamic lighting a map or something that's I don't know. There's all these extra little elements that go into it.
Yeah.
I think we put more effort into Table Story than our streams, though. Me and you, I
Yeah,
can speak for.
I think it's probably the whole not wanting to let people down in the show aspect. Like you have to put all that energy into this one episode. Whereas when you're streaming, sometimes you can literally just hit go live and sit and talk to people. It's not like you can't be, you don't have to. I don't know.
I
It
barely
feels
prep
different.
my actual daily stream. I check the game that I'm going to play works.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll change like an intro and chuck something different up, and then I click go live. I rarely do like any.
I have
else.
more anxiety around Table Stories show that I'm putting on than I do my regular
sure.
stream for sure.
Is it because of the responsibility, like
Yeah.
that interconnection with other people?
You want it to be like really good and unique, and
And
the
then
amount of retroactive active viewers we get for it as well. There
Yeah.
are people coming in that are watching stuff that I did like 4 years ago, and they're like telling me, they're like, "Oh, this was so good," and I'm like, "Oh wow, I have no
idea what you're talking about. Yeah. Or people who will come in. So what I've noticed is like I'll be streaming or doing something like I'm playing through Silent Hill right now and I'm playing through that. And I've had people come in and be like, I'm binge watching Gone right now. It's so good. Okay, but I'm so sorry to do this, but I'm gonna go watch more of Gone. And I'm just like, hey man, it's my content. That's awesome.
Oh yeah,
Go do that, and whatnot. And then they, and just they're binging it. And so it's that whole idea of like, I have to make sure it stays amazing. I can't slack at all. I have to just bring 120,000% every week.
That's
And,
so makes sense.
Yeah, it's a lot. But
I didn't know that many existed.
Yeah. Well,
there was a
get
limit.
on my level, Bradley.
I'm sorry, I can't count.
That's
But
7
also,
IQ.
it's almost like I feel like if you were given a TV show, for example, if we said,
Yeah.
okay, Hunter Loco, you are going to be producing this TV show for the next year. You're writing it, you're directing it, you're editing it, you're producing everything to do with it. You're used to streaming, you know how that goes, your
Yeah.
daily streams and stuff, and you would probably end up going, well, what if we improve this? And you're going back and forth and you're thinking about things. And I feel like if you had a thing like that to work on, it's just natural to prioritize that because it's it's a thing that needs a particular kind of attention.
Mm.
Whereas your daily stream, it certainly needs attention, and you have to make sure that you prioritize your energy and stuff correctly, and that's a whole other thing, of course. But I feel like you can almost get away with it. Just the focal point for most of us, and we're all just game streamers, right? Pretty much. There's no, you don't do any crazy special things. The game can be the focal point, and that's like a lot of the heavy lifting. Kind of, you just
Yeah.
react to it almost. Whereas when you are producing the game live, it's
Mhm.
different. So
Yeah.
you know that you have to have that prepared, and you want to bring that, and you want to make that good, and everyone has to react to it. My brain is so dead after GMing. It's crazy.
Yes.
The energy it
Yes.
takes to GM a session, 3 hours of a game, is like nothing I've experienced really ever before. I come off of it, and it's like my brain is just fully dead.
Yeah.
And I have to sit and kind of stare blankly for the rest of the evening at like
Yeah.
a wall and recover, because it's just really uses every creative muscle I think you have, and you're constantly
Mhm.
going and thinking. So that's like a weird thing that comes from it. But I for sure think that putting more, you don't have to do this as well. I know that some of this is advice for new streamers or people who might want to build a tabletop game. You don't have to do this, prioritize a thing. It's just, again, how I think we work.
Yeah.
It's just really hard not to.
Depends on what you're
Um,
set out to do. And I think, like, with StreamerSquare, I feel like Hunter and I draw a lot of parallels to the journey that you guys have had, and like what we're experiencing with, like, prioritization, and
Yeah.
needing extra resources, extra help. By the way, do you guys have someone that runs your production, or do you do that? Like,
We
who's
run it. Yeah, we each run our own production for the show, which
while you're
is
DMing?
insane. Yeah.
And so you
yeah.
guys do all the sound effects and the transition. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes we will have a guest, and we will produce for the guest
Yeah,
GM.
so that the guest GM doesn't have to do all that stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So like
we've experimented a little bit with some other ways,
Yeah.
but for the most part, we do our own thing.
Like we had Domestic Dan come on to GM a Mass Effect show, which was awesome. So I produced that one for him just so he could focus on GMing
Yeah.
and do like the sounds and stuff. And we've got a vampire show going right now where, one of us is producing so that, they can focus on.
It's actually
Yeah.
awesome to have
So awesome.
somebody else produce, run the OBS, prepare the music, like hit play, and sound effects and things, while you just concentrate on GMing and ensuring that your players are having a good time and everything's going smoothly.
Yeah, we definitely know that.
It's the best ever. But it's a lot to ask of someone else, essentially. For even
Yeah.
if it was me and PB, who were already so involved in everything going on, if I was to run something and PB produces it, well, then that's another evening of PB's week that's
Yeah.
essentially spent.
Let me produce your next show,
Hard
please.
to do. Well, I think we should maybe tune in to Table Story next year, because I feel like we're just going to give up on everything. I've got divorce papers coming.
Oh, you mean because we're just going to put everything into
That's
Table
going to
Story?
be it.
Yeah.
That's going to be it.
Yeah.
I'm going to get up. I'm going to
Yeah.
stream. I'm going to eat like one pancake that I found outside, and then start up. Yeah, producing.
The
on another
amount of
show.
times I've wanted to order him food because I'm like, I know what you're doing. I know you haven't eaten. Like, I just want to send you delivery at your house by the time the
Yeah.
show's over. It's just.
I feel
but
so guilty sometimes. Like,
labor of
people
love, though.
just ask me to do stuff. They're like, "Hey, you free on Monday?" I'm like, "No, I haven't been free for 5 years. What are you talking about?" They're like, "It's Christmas." I'm like, "Yeah, it's not. It's a special Table Story night. You silly." Yeah, no, I do think that the production side of things benefits massively from having someone run the extra stuff.
sure.
But
Yeah.
it's a huge ask, and like then there's like capital. We have no budget.
Yeah, that's also too, right? Which is another
So-
thing that you should consider when you're just starting out. You might be tempted to really want to do that physical space. It's been a dream for us for quite a while as well, but that's a lot. That's a lot of like overhead right in the beginning to set up the physical space, especially now with COVID and everything. So, but
For sure.
yeah, just being aware of like how, where your costs are going to go and what your priorities are. Like, if you want to commission a soundtrack or, stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's
How do you
another
guys
big thing
like
too.
drive funding? Is it just Twitch subs or do you guys have a Patreon?
Yeah, we do. We have a Patreon. We do Twitch subs. There's a lot of ways to monetize the game that we purposely do not do because we want a more immersive experience. So, you're kind of like sacrificing on your total income for that, but it's a decision that we want to prioritize the audience experience too a little bit. So, like you can have players donate to like change a role or do something, which, is pretty awesome. Depending on what you're doing. Like we'll do a shill show typically once a month where it's like,
It's
yeah,
called a shill
it's
show.
called a
That's the
shill show.
title.
It's absolutely absurd. And everybody's playing a crazy character and it's really just laughing for 4 hours straight. And that's when you can, donate to make all the, crazy stuff happen. But then it stays out of the regular shows so that they can stay, cinematic. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to talk about is, I guess, like marketing distribution. So you guys stream on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
What happens after the stream is done? How do people find your show? How do people consume your content?
After the stream is done, we highlight the VODs and cut out the break so that people who go back to watch the VOD have a better experience. Then we export that highlight without the break to YouTube so people can watch that. And we, abide the contract where it's a certain number of hours before it goes live on YouTube. And then we do podcast versions of the show as well. And then, the main thing that you got to look out for that is like, SEO and all the crazy stuff I've learned about podcasting. And luckily Brad comes from a YouTube background, so he was able to help us with that. But yeah, there's just a lot to keep in mind when you're trying to, diversify how people get your content. But I'd say those are the main three big ones. And you don't have to go crazy. As much as I would love for us to hire an editor for the podcast version and like, trim the fat a bit, it really what it is like the beginning, the break is cut out. I add a cool little stinger and then I upload it. And that's what they get essentially. So maybe don't overcomplicate it too much, but podcasts are a really important way for people to digest that content too. So
nice.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. So, and then like the marketing side of things, like you guys do like really cool trailers and, how do you, what is your, like how do you go about your marketing in a way that, like with Twitter, and do you guys use any other platforms? And how do you get the word out?
I'm going to be really honest with you. There has been zero marketing going into our trailer making. We just do it because it's cool and it's more like a movie. I don't think we sat down and were like, we have a marketing strategy. We just wanted to do a cool teaser.
Well, it's a good strategy.
Yeah, but
I always watch them. They're great.
Yeah, we do like it, but I don't think there's a strategy behind that or anything like that. But yeah, we'll post it on Twitter, I think, and then on YouTube, and then we'll show our teasers on like trailers on other shows so that people know what's coming and stuff like that. But
that makes
sense. We sort of try and hype stuff up the week of specifically a new show, just to make sure it's in everyone's mind to be at the place at the time.
Yeah.
It's very clear that you're driving people to a place and they know when it's on and what it is, kinda, and when to be there. Just be there then. That's when it's live. Go there. That's it. That's really the aim.
Yeah.
We kind of generate hype, I think, through the teasers and the trailers, and they're cool. And we don't always, only really recently, we don't always just even say who the cast is or what the system is or what the show is even called, because that's just very fun. One thing we have is an amazing Discord community, which I've never seen a Discord like it. It's amazing. My Discord is just people just being awful. Not to me all the time, but they're just awful. Some of them are in here. They're terrible. But but like our Discord on Table Story is unreal. Like people are in their theory crafting what's coming up, like who characters are, what's going on here. Does this thing link to this? And everybody's really like I said, the community on Table Story is awesome. And one of the things I think that we've found is that just through accident, if you don't, we just didn't announce one thing once. It might even have just been leaked very recently. We didn't announce like what it was fully. We just put out a cool sounding trailer with some cool voice acting.
Oh yeah, and they figured it out right away.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was just like, but the hype behind people like this is, I want to know what this is.
Yeah.
Like the mystery of it was really interesting, I think, for people
That's
to
something that I
get excited about.
forgot to mention. Like there's so many different ways you can like build hype. If you don't know how to do like trailers and stuff like that, for Stygian and Nocturne, we did a website puzzle where people had to like, they went through and they were trying to like solve and get clues, and the clues led to what the system was and like who was in the cast and stuff like that. So yeah, little cool fun ways to get the community involved.
Excited for the opening episode. And another thing, like you mentioned earlier on, some of these things are long-term shows. They might be on for a year. They might be on for 6 weeks. You don't know always, and it changes and things. But I think the first episode is the most important one. As much as I don't want to build up any anxiety over your first episode, like I said earlier on, but it really is the hook. Like it's the first one, and it's the one that if they don't watch the first one or they turn it off, they're not coming back for 2. But if they're in for 2, they're probably in for 3, 4, 5. They'll probably follow the whole thing through. So generating hype and making sure that people are watching the first episode, I would say should be a priority for people who don't maybe think like that, which is me. I don't often think that way. Like business and advertisement stuff isn't always my first thought.
I thought you meant like episode 1 being super good. You don't normally.
I don't always.
What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, my first priority isn't like how many numbers and how much money can we make off of these.
Yeah, not at all.
How can we farm these cattle of every coin? That's like never been my MO. But sometimes you have to kind of think about these things, and I do think that generating as much hype and making sure that it's clear when your first episode is on is really beneficial in the long run, regardless of how long that run ends up being.
For sure. All right. So unfortunately, we are out of time today. It's been such a fantastic episode. Brad, PB, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Shout outs. PB, tell us where you're at and what you're up to.
Yeah, you can find me at Twitter and Twitch at Pumpkinberry. You can also find me, all the crazy projects that I'm up to, on pumpkinberry.tv. I do like a bunch of different podcasts, like dark podcasts for the Netflix TV show. And then, of course, I'm over on Table Story. So you can find everything at pumpkinberry.tv. And thank you again for having me. This was great.
Awesome. Brad, what about you?
Hello, I'm BradWOTO. You can find me at twitch.tv/shroud, where I stream every day. I can't. I'm so bad at advertising myself. I hate it. I've been playing
with
VR this week, and it's made me feel very sick today. So that's why I feel like this might be a dream.
Anything that contributed to this?
Where am I? Yeah, I've just been walking around naked in the background. This has all been a dream, and you're all like, "Oh God, someone call his family."
Meanwhile, I'm texting you, being like, "Brad, where
are you?" No, I stream daily. I stream every day, pretty much. I have my audience votes on which games I play for the most part. So
it's
coming up on
entertaining.
Love it.
So good.
I hate picking games. I do variety, and it's the worst.
I will change my schedule in the day if I'm like, if a game vote's going on, I'm like, oh wait, I'll delay the start of my stream because it's somehow so entertaining.
Big democratic vote on which game I'm going to hate next week. That's usually what I do on my channel. I stream at 9 Eastern.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of my American times because
I thought you were trying to think of your channel name. I was like,
I don't know my channel name. Also you can find me on Table Story as well as a bunch of stuff. Again, like we've been speaking more about Table Story. So if you want to follow that, it's twitch.tv/Table Story. There's also tablestory.tv, which is a website.
Which shows in it.
Sometimes a little easier to figure out if you want to find a show to watch or you're interested. Tablestory.tv has like a little blurb about each one that might tell you, this is a Domestic Dan's Horizon Zero Dawn show, or my D&D show, or PB's weird, surreal, whatever PB's crazy mind comes up with show,
There's an
as well as
show.
Mm-hmm.
there's some weird stuff that comes out of PB's mind. We have.
I wasn't talking about my own show. I was talking about the Horizon Zero Dawn show. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
I would never say that about my own show.
Yeah, that's on Mondays, which is now. We have shows like most nights between. Obviously, some shows end, and then there's times in between those. If you want to check out that, then that's TableStory.tv or just twitch.tv/TableStory, and you can go and see some of our shows. Some are very long form, and some are short form. So you can jump in on the next show. It's a short form one to kind of get a taste for it if you want.
Yeah. Come see us on Saturday. We play vampires.
Which is kind of what you asked actually earlier on, just to answer another question that you don't want me to answer because you want to end your show, but I'm going to anyway. We do a thing where we have very long form shows, like 50 episodes, and some that are 6. So then you can go, oh, well, I'm not watching 50 episodes of this guy who doesn't shut up. Let's watch the 6th episode one. So there's plenty of stuff for you to watch. I'll shut up now, I promise. Am I still alive?
No, we ended 5 minutes ago.
Just music played. Beautiful.
Hunter,
Thank you for having me and listening to my stuff.
Of course. Thank you both. Hunter, what about you? What are you up
to? We joked at the beginning of the show, in the pre-show, that the guests would do all the heavy lifting and we wouldn't talk the whole time. And it was very pleasant to see that actually fulfilled.
It was a nice break, Hunter. Did you have a good time today's show?
We didn't have to host anything. We asked like 3 questions. Y'all just jammed on it. It was so
I feel terrible. Do you feel terrible, PB?
I do now. Did we?
That was a relief.
You did the work for us. But that was
okay.
It was perfect.
Okay.
So thank
I know you guys were nervous that are you going to ask us questions? You guys are pros at this.
All right. I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted us to speak specifically to anything. I didn't know if you wanted us to be more like production heavy or like how do we just do things? But we just rambled. We rambled.
I learned so much, so I appreciate it.
I think it's very similar to what you guys do here.
Yeah.
Really. I think you can.
Yeah, there's definitely some similarities.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing, really. We're just all lying in smoke and mirrors. I have no idea.
What about you, Loco?
Wait, you didn't shout out anything.
My intro to being on the show today was like, I ate good pasta.
What pasta was it, by the way? I am curious. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I don't know. I don't remember. It was definitely a parm.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So that's all I'm going to get out of Hunter. So I'm going to do my shout out now. If you guys enjoyed this show, make sure to follow StreamerSquare. We do shows Monday through Wednesday. We have 6 awesome shows with more in the works. So if you guys want to learn about streaming, definitely hit the follow button. Find us everywhere. We are StreamerSquare on YouTube and website and Twitter and everything. And we have a little announcement for you guys. I know I said that we do shows every single week here. We are actually going to be taking a break starting beginning November. All of our shows will be on a small break for the rest of the year as we have the holidays coming up, and we're going to be working on some really exciting stuff for all of our shows, plus some new ones we're going to be launching in the new year. So we've got some really cool plans, and the best way you can keep up with what we're up to is a newsletter that we're going to be launching really soon. So if you guys want to sign up to the newsletter, if the mods could link that in chat, that'd be fantastic. That's going to be all of the news related to what we're working on, new stuff. We've also got some streaming tips and a lot more, as StreamerSquare is going to be making a big splash in January. So, we want you guys to be a part of it. And we're going to miss you guys, over the next 2 months, but it is definitely worth it as we have some really cool stuff in the works. So subscribe to the newsletter. We will be back next week. It is not the end of the month yet. We do have another Monday. So we still have our shows the rest of this week and next week as well. So catch them, hit the follow button, and we'll see you next time. Thank you guys for watching. This has been the Stream Scene.